The complete story of Ishmael, forgotten son of Abraham. Long ago, in a land of dry deserts and endless skies, lived Abraham, a man of great faith, chosen by God for a special purpose. Abraham and his wife Sarah had followed God's calling, leaving their homeland in search of the promised land. But despite God's promise that Abraham would become the father of many nations, he and Sarah remained childless for many years. The weight of this promise grew heavier with each passing day. Hagar, the Egyptian servant Sarah, burdened by her inability to conceive, devised a plan. She gave her Egyptian servant Hagar to Abraham as a wife, hoping that through Hagar she could have a child. In those ancient times, it was not uncommon for a servant to bear children for her mistress, and Sarah saw this as a way to fulfill the promise. Hagar soon became pregnant, and as the child grew in her womb, so did the tension between her and Sarah. Hagar began to despise Sarah, feeling empowered by the life growing inside her. In response, Sarah treated Hagar harshly, leading her to flee into the wilderness. Lost and alone in the desert, Hagar sat by a spring of water, wondering about her fate. It was there that an angel of the Lord appeared to her, a rare and divine encounter for a woman, especially a servant. The angel spoke with compassion, urging Hagar to return to Sarah and submit to her, but also offering a promise. The angel told Hagar that her son would be named Ishmael, meaning God hears, for the Lord had heard her cries of suffering. Ishmael would become the father of a great nation, and though he would live a life filled with struggle and conflict, God would always be with him. Reassured, Hagar returned to Abraham and Sarah's household. Soon after, she gave birth to Ishmael, the first son of Abraham, and for a time, there was peace. Years passed, and when Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90, God fulfilled his original promise. Sarah miraculously gave birth to Isaac, a son of their own flesh and blood. The birth of Isaac was met with great joy, but it also reignited the tensions in the household. As Ishmael grew older, Sarah began to feel threatened by his presence. Though he was Abraham's firstborn, she feared that he would share in the inheritance meant for Isaac. One day, Sarah saw Ishmael playing with Isaac, and her jealousy could no longer be contained. She demanded that Abraham send Hagar and Ishmael away, declaring that Ishmael would not share in Isaac's inheritance. Abraham was torn. He loved Ishmael deeply, for he was his son. But God spoke to Abraham, reassuring him. God told Abraham not to be distressed because of Ishmael, for he would make Ishmael into a great nation as well. But Isaac was the child through whom God's covenant would be fulfilled. With a heavy heart, Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael away with nothing more than some bread and a skin of water. They wandered through the desert of Beersheba, and soon their supplies ran out. Exhausted and on the brink of death, Hagar placed Ishmael under a bush and walked a short distance away, unable to bear the sight of her child dying. It was then that God intervened once again. An angel of the Lord called out to Hagar from heaven, assuring her that God had heard Ishmael's cries. The angel showed her a well of water, and she filled her skin, giving Ishmael the life-saving drink. Ishmael grew up in the wilderness, becoming an expert archer. He lived a rugged, nomadic life. Far from the comforts of Abraham's household, he eventually settled in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother arranged for him to marry an Egyptian woman. Ishmael went on to father 12 sons who became the founders of 12 tribes. These tribes spread across the Arabian Peninsula, and Ishmael's descendants became a great nation just as God had promised. According to tradition, Ishmael is considered the forefather of the Arab peoples, and through his line, many great nations arose. Though Ishmael had been cast out, his story does not end in isolation. Years later, when Abraham passed away, both Ishmael and Isaac came together to bury their father in the cave of Machpelah. It was a solemn moment, a reunion of two brothers whose destinies had been shaped by divine promises. While Isaac carried forward the covenant that would eventually lead to the nation of Israel, Ishmael's legacy lived on in the vast lands of Arabia, where his descendants would flourish and play their own significant role in history. Though Ishmael is often seen as the forgotten son of Abraham, his story is one of survival, resilience, and God's unwavering promise. His life was marked by hardship and conflict, but it was also filled with divine encounters and a destiny that shaped the future of nations. Ishmael's story serves as a reminder that even in moments of despair, God hears our cries and has a plan for all his children. The story of Ishmael is not just a tale of conflict between brothers or the struggles of a single family. It is a story of God's faithfulness to his promises, even when the path seems unclear or the circumstances are difficult. It speaks to themes of inheritance, faith, and the human desire for belonging. Ishmael's journey through the wilderness is a symbol of the trials we all face, and his ultimate survival reminds us that God's plans often extend beyond what we can see. Please like, subscribe, and share. Stay blessed.